I distinctly remember, Ken, everything you're seeing here still obeys the same laws of physics, running either direction. And I've always tried to grapple with this question of how something that could look so different might still obey the same laws of physics.
Can the laws of physics also predict the choices that people make? Are there fundamental rules that, when everything is set in motion from a given starting position, lead us inevitably to one and only one possible outcome? Einstein thought so. His theory of relativity tells us we live in something called a block universe, in which all of space and all of time are laid out like a roll of film, where the past, present, and future all exist at once. This, Ken says, means the future can affect the past just as the past affects the future.
The future is not just some series of random events. There are correlations between the present and future that we can predict. That's what science does. And in the course of making these predictions, it's more natural to think of the universe as being one continuous structure rather than being a bunch of frames cut up and spread all over the floor.
Ken believes that all events, even quantum events, have a definite starting point and a definite ending point. But there is uncertainty in what happens in between.
The way to make sense of this is retrocausality. The idea that it is our future choice that causes that uncertainty.
Retrocausality means the future affects the past. The beginning and ending of events are fixed in time. But Ken argues quantum physics creates flexibility in the middle. And that flexibility offers us the chance to control our fate.
In the Newtonian clockwork universe, the initial state and the laws determine everything there is. There's no freedom given the initial state. In a time-symmetric universe, it's not obvious that that's true, because if something is dependent not only on the initial state, but equally on the final state, now those intermediate events aren't predetermined in the sense they're not determined by the initial state. They might eventually be determined, but there's more wiggle room for free will.
In other words, the end points of our fates may be fixed, but we don't know how precisely we will reach them.
I don't know what I'm going to decide in 1 minute. And yet, that decision will be made. It will be determined. So there's a perfect example of something that I don't know and is not possibly not determined just by the past, but nevertheless will eventually be determined.
As we sail into the future, do we really have the freedom to set our own course? This man thinks the fate of humanity hangs on how you, me, and everyone else answers this question. Because if we give up on free will, humanity could be doomed.
The debate over just how much or how little freedom we have to choose our fate has raged for thousands of years. It may go on for millennia to come. No matter who is actually right, it certainly feels like we have free will, doesn't it? What if believing we have a choice is necessary for the survival of the human race?
In 1994, a young man named Jonathan Schooler picked up a book by Nobel Prize-winning scientist Francis Crick. In it, Crick wrote, "You are, in fact, no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules." Jonathan Schooler eventually became a neuroscientist. Today, he's a star professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. But he's still troubled by Crick's book.
I was really taken with Francis Crick's The Astonishing Hypothesis for several reasons. First off, he said in absolute terms that science had conclusively ruled out the existence of free will, and I just wasn't really persuaded that that degree of certainty was merited.
Crick's beliefs have only become more popular over time. So a few years ago, Jonathan began running experiments to see how this message of strict determinism affects people's behavior. In today's experiment, a series of students will have their morality tested, but only after they are exposed to messages about the nature of fate and free will.
I am Elohim.
At the end of the experiment, they will fill out.
I speak unto the darkness, be gone. Excess data cleared.
Other students read statements that boast of their belief in free will. Then all of the participants are given a cognitive test, but before they can finish, Jonathan pretends to be called away.
Oh dear, I'm late. I'm gonna need you to grade the test yourself. I'll give you the key and then score yourself $1 for every one that you got correct, okay?
Will the messages the students saw earlier affect their behavior? Most students only get a question or two correct. Some pay themselves accordingly. But other students take more than their share.
Those people who are told there's no such thing as free will consistently took more coins than those who were not given that information. In other words, telling people there's no such thing as free will to some degree undermines their capacity to act in a moral manner.
Jonathan suspects believing you are just a pawn in a cosmic chess game gives people an excuse for bad behavior. Don't blame me. I don't have free will.
Another possibility is it kind of pulls the rug out from underneath them, that they have this experience of will normally, but when you tell them they have no such thing as free will, they just don't have the oomph to be able to prevent themselves from resisting the temptation of avoiding cheating.
Like all thinking people, Jonathan has his own views on free will. He accepts that we are shaped by genetics, society, and the deep workings of the universe. But he also sees a place for conscious choice.
From my vantage, free will is a lot like sailing. When you sail, you're buffeted around by the currents, by the weather, by the wind. Nevertheless, you're able to set a tack, and even though you can't control where you are at any given moment necessarily, if you set your tack right, you can end up largely where you want to go.
This is what Jonathan believes, but neither he nor anyone else can prove it.
Although we've learned a great deal about the nature of human consciousness, about the nature of reality, about physics and so on, given what we don't know, I think we need to be very cautious about ruling out the existence of something as so fundamental as free will. And keeping that option open, allowing people to be free to believe in free will, seems to be a really good idea, because free will, at least the belief in free will, seems to be of great value to people.
Whether or not the universe controls our fate, humans will always be compelled to ask, why is this happening? We will always work for change, because even if our courses are predetermined, we don't know them, and probably never will. For us, every day is a new chance for discovery, a new opportunity to take control of our destiny. Illusion or not.
Were we put here on purpose by someone or something? Or did some random event create all the incredible complexity we see today. Scientists have been trying to understand how life was created. But there are still gaps in our understanding. Could our existence be the work of a higher power? Or was it the laws of nature? Did God create evolution?
The answer that came to me again and again was
time,
play.
Life
Every
itself,
human society in recorded history
the secrets of the cosmos.
has games. We don't just solve problems out of necessity. We do it for fun. Even as adults. Leave a human being alone with a knotted rope, and they will unravel it. Leave a human being alone with blocks, and they will build something. Games are part of what makes us human. We see the world as a mystery, a puzzle, because we've always been a species of problem solvers.
There's another theory. Life created itself about 4 billion years ago. And the myriad species Earth has known have all been the product of evolution. Theology and science struggles to find a common ground. Did Charles Darwin get it right when he proposed that evolution created all life? Was it the guiding hand of some supreme being? Or could it have been both? I used to find caterpillars in the bushes near my house growing up. Fat, stubby worms. Before long, each one hid away inside a silky cocoon. I wondered what was going on inside that tiny shelter. How did something so ugly transform into a beautiful butterfly? Michael Behe is a biochemist from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. He's an advocate for an idea called intelligent design, that someone or something planted the seeds of life on Earth and has had a guiding hand in its evolution ever since.
Intelligent design argues that random processes can produce what we see in life today, but it has no quarrel with the idea of descent from ancient organisms to modern organisms.
Michael's problem with Darwin's theory is that Darwin insists evolution stems from random mutation. When he looks around in nature, he sees plenty of things that look like they were randomly thrown together, like the debris in these woods.
We had a storm pass through here recently. Nobody would think that any of this was particularly arranged on purpose. You know, it's just a jumble. Here's a stick here, there's a stick there, a stone there.
The answer that
But
came
Michael
to me again and
believes
again
other things in nature
was
could
play.
not have arranged themselves
Every human
randomly.
society in recorded
They
history
appear to
has
be
games.
the work
We
of a
don't just
designer.
solve problems out of necessity. We
Just
do
as
it
these
for
sticks
fun.
didn't randomly
Even
arrange
as
themselves
adults.
into the word life.
Leave a human being alone
Michael
with a
doesn't
knotted
believe
rope, and they
biological
will
life came
unravel it.
together
Leave a
randomly
human being
either.
alone with blocks,
I'm a biochemist,
and they will build
and
something.
so I see
Games are
evidence
part of what
in
makes us
nature,
human. We
places
see
where
the world
most
as a
people
mystery, a
don't think
puzzle,
about, but
because
it's in
we've
the cell.
always been a
The
species
cell
of
is
problem
a
solvers.
fantastic nanoscale factory with machinery, literally machines made out of molecules.
Michael studies the structure of bacteria. Some bacteria have tails called flagella that allow them to swim.
It is quite literally an outboard motor that bacteria use to swim. And just like an outboard motor in our everyday life, it's got clamps to hold it onto the bacterial membrane. It's got a propeller that spins round and around. Turns out if you remove one or more of these pieces, the flagellum doesn't work at all.
The complicated structure of bacterial tails led Michael to develop a theory he calls irreducible complexity. It claims that living systems need all of their parts They can't evolve piece by piece.
So Darwin's theory requires this gradualism, where some feature of biology is built up slowly over time. But with an irreducibly complex system, that means a system that has a number of components. You can't build it up gradually over time and have it work.
If the tail of the bacterium was missing just one part, the whole thing wouldn't function. Michael doesn't think organisms could have made such leaps of complexity through evolution alone. He thinks they must have had help from a creator.
I'm a Christian, and so I certainly think God created the universe. But the nice thing about intelligent design is that you can realize something that was designed without knowing who the designer was. You can be confident of the design.
The complex design of bacteria tails isn't the most mysterious leap in biology. There are even more complex structures that are harder to explain, like the bony spines of vertebrates. Our earliest vertebrate ancestors had backbones called notochords, almost flexible rods made of collagen. Some big freshwater fish that are alive today still have them. Other species, like us, have evolved bones in the back, vertebral columns. But how did long strips of collagen make the leap and become bony spines? Bioroboticist John Long at Vassar College is searching for these missing links.
One of the great questions we're interested in is how did this group of animals that we belong to, called vertebrates, first evolve? Now this happened 500 million years ago, so we don't have a time machine we can jump in, unfortunately, and go back and see what happened.
John suspects the first versions of the vertebral column were small mistakes in our DNA that created little bony deposits on the notochord. They stuck around because they ended up making animals faster, stronger, and better at finding food. But fossils of ancient fish don't tell this evolutionary story step by step. There are huge gaps in the historical record. So John has decided to try and fill in these gaps by bringing extinct creatures back to life as robots.
Welcome to the abyss. We create an artificial world here in this tank for our swimming biorobots, where we reanimate evolution that happened 500 million years ago.
John's robots are called Evolvobots. They are about to play the game of life.
This is a biomimetic vertebral column that's specially designed out of collagen, and we can vary the number of vertebrae, and this is the feature that we're allowing to evolve.
John has given them notochords that can each be segmented with different numbers of vertebrae, from 0 to 5 to 10 to 15. He has created a world in which life means life or food. The Evolvobot's task is to find their next dinner.
So we go from 0, 5 to 10 to 15. And what we're expecting is that the robots with the most vertebrae over here will outcompete the robots with the fewest vertebrae. So this should be gold medal winner, silver medal winner, bronze medal winner, and thank you for trying. Now Dragon way behind now looks like 0 vertebrae.
The Evolvobots with segmented backbones are performing better than the one without.
Look at number 10, way out in front now. And then we have number 5 and 15 over on the side there is getting there, but slowly.
To John's surprise, the Evolvobot with 10 bones won, beating the one with 15.
So, what do we have emerging? It looks like intermediate number of vertebrae is doing a better job at getting food. So it's not just having a bunch of vertebrae, it's having the right number.
John believes this shows that evolution is not a design process. Nature may have randomly tried different kinds of backbones, and the best ones survived.
We find that when there's selection pressure for enhanced feeding and fleeing, this is sufficient to drive the evolution of vertebrae.
Using his research, John can trace the path of backbone evolution all the way up to us.
So as humans, we get bothered by the idea that we could have evolved in all our wonderful brain-heavy glory by random processes. But one of the hard things to wrap your head around as a human being is that evolution works not by design, but by hands-off emergent principles.
John's Evolvabots give us a window into how primitive organisms can evolve into upright, complex human beings. But has there been enough time in the history of Earth for this slow and unsteady process of evolution to happen? An MIT complexity theorist is doing the